Well, welcome to the Burn Up Podcast. It's an honor to have a dear friend of mine, a client, the CEO of Experience Roofing, my two older sons, Dominic and Cole's employer, boss, head honcho, just a dear, dear friend, Jamie Stagg. Jamie, thanks for being with me today on the Burn Up Podcast.
Dude, I'm super excited to be here with you, Adam.
So, Jamie, you and I go back, I was thinking about this morning. I think, 26 years, 27 years.
Yeah, it's probably about that.
A lot of friends that I played rugby with in high school, you guys were sharing, we called the pad, you guys lived together. And I remember, I couldn't remember your first name, but I knew you as Silk Sheets because you had silk sheets. And did you have a waterbed too?
Of course I did. Adam, if you're in college days and all you care about is getting girls, you have to have silk sheets.
Silk sheets and a waterbed.
Although I don't know how well that worked.
But. Yeah, I know, but still, I remember like, who has the silk sheets? I mean, you had like the room put together. Everybody else's room was just a disaster, but I just remember the silk sheets for quite a while. And I even remember when I first got married, I don't even know why. Jenny Ann was there. We went over there and she's like, who's got the silk sheets? And just even said it out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh, it's Jamie.
Whose room is clean? And why does he have silk sheets?
It was yours. Well, dude, gosh, there's so many memories, so many things we can discuss, as you and I've gotten to know each other and you've had tremendous amounts of success. And one of the big things on this podcast that I love to talk about are like the things that we go through. A lot of things we don't talk about, when we've been in the shit or we've gone through something challenging and more difficult. Sometimes there's shame associated with it. There's guilt. There's, we have all these sorts of stories, and with time passes, then we feel more comfortable talking about it, right? And one of the big main premises of this podcast, of what I want to try to share with those that are listening, especially the men, it's like, hey, no one's perfect. We all have shit, and what connects us, frankly, is more than just the awards or the accolades. Really, are a lot of the challenges we've been through. Details aside, there's commonality, there's parallels, with what we as men and humans in general go through,
Yeah. Well, and again, so many times I feel like, and I did this in my life, like people, when you have tragedy or you have like all the downtimes and all the weight of the crap that you carry through your life, people just tend to, like you said, not talk about it. And they shove it down and it's like, oh, I'm going to shove this out of my life like it didn't happen. What people don't realize is you just carry it with you. And it's a lot of times it's talking about those things and getting that out that helps you get through that. Right?
So why do you think we bury that? What do you think the root of that is?
I mean, I think it's natural human instinct, right? You feel a pain point behind something, or something happened in your life that maybe you're ashamed of, or maybe it was a point in your life that you were down. And the easiest thing and the natural reaction is, I don't want that in my life, so I'm just going to bury it. And the truth of the matter is, when you bury it, it's still with you. You're carrying it with you. And a lot of times it's talking about it or getting those things out or going through the experience again and saying, hey, this is not going to define who I am. It's going to be a part of my life, but it isn't who I am as a human being. And getting that out and actually letting that go. In talking with you, you've talked about, in order to move up, you have to let go. Yeah. And so a lot of it is like, talk about it, get it out. It's not going to define who you are. It was a bad experience, or it was a bad decision, or whatever that may be. But push it out, let it go. Why carry this backpack full of crap through your entire life? To me, it's pointless.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting. There's shame, there's guilt associated. It can be viewed as weakness. I mean, the list goes on and on why we don't share the things we struggle with, and literally I was talking to you before we started recording. I just posted yesterday about my bad with addiction and like my, detox, if you will, from nicotine. I love nicotine. I love a Zen. Like I love it. And it was just like, it had too much control over me. So, as I shared on social, Dominic, my oldest son, challenged me. I took the challenge in a weak moment, which I'm grateful I did today, but afterwards it was hell. But it was interesting. I went online and I kind of talked about that and just addiction in general. And I believe we all have different modalities and things that we lean on to manage emotions and do stuff. But it's interesting. There was a guy that sent me a message after I posted that. And he goes, what I'm realizing my addiction is I'm addicted to the past, this story. I have this old story, and he's stuck. And this guy's been stuck for years. And I just and I've kind of seen it, but the way he worded it, but more importantly, he had awareness around it.
Yeah.
And as you said, when we can speak to it, when we can own it, when we can recognize it, it's like, then we can move on. Because if we pretend it didn't happen, or we try to bury it, or
Well, and so many times people consume that as part of their identity and who they are, whether they want to or not, right? Like it could be a negative experience that you take in and you can't let go of it, so you own it and it becomes a part of who you are, when in reality, maybe it's not who you are. Maybe it was a bad choice or a bad time in your life, but it's not defining who you are. And by hanging on to that, it changes the direction of your life. It changes the direction of what you're doing and how you think and what you do, versus letting it go and realizing, hey, this is not who I am. This isn't going to define me. I'm going to push this into the past as a bad choice or a bad decision, and move on with life and let that go, so you can, bring more in.
I'm in the world of personal development, and I'm wondering if how long has it been now? Has it been a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, where you finally you had an experience with another coach, and you actually are like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I just felt called. I need to reach into it. What was going on in your life at that time where you felt like, you know what, I'm going to go in on me, or I'm going to invest more in me?
Yeah, for me it was, gosh, I don't really know what prompted me to originally do it, because it's not like me. Like, I've ran companies and done different things in my life, and I've always thought, yeah, I got this on my own. I can do whatever I want to do. And I was at a real estate convention. Another guy that is a friend of mine that used to work for me said, hey, come check this out. And I was sitting in the audience, and I just like, something inside of me is like, when this person gets done speaking, go talk to him. And it's not like me to do that. We had a VIP pass to the event, so the speakers were in the back, and he was talking with a bunch of people, and I walked up to him and I said, hey, I need to mentor with you. And I don't even know why I did it or why I said it, but he looked at me and said, call me in an hour. And so I did that, picked up the phone, called him, and we talked through what that looks like. And I'd never done any personal development coaching or anything before. And I just leaned into it, and I said, yeah, let's set this up, and started meeting with him, and went through a bunch of experiences with that, finding out things about myself that I didn't really know. Again, I was a guy that would put things in, bury those things, or, put those, but still carry them in my backpack with me. And I went through some experiences and doing stuff with him, and, later started doing some coaching and mentoring with you. And realizing that you don't have to carry the backpack with you all the time. And through one of the experiences that I had there, it was really literally hitting it on the head, and taking some of my past experiences and, number one, addressing them. A lot of people are afraid to address it, right? Like, they'll say, yeah, it was there, but I don't really want to talk about it. I want to just push it to the side. But taking and addressing it solely for myself, and saying, this was something that I did, or a bad decision that I made, and literally letting it go and having a conversation with myself. The experience that I had was having a conversation with myself as me today, and coaching myself as me 25 years ago, and saying, everything's okay. It was simply a bad choice. It's not who you are. It was a choice that you made.
All right. So can we go there?
I'm happy to go there.
What, 25 years ago, what happened?
Yeah,
what was Jamie doing during that time in his life?
It's funny when you're in your teens, early 20s, you're getting out of high school, you're getting to college years, and your number one concern is you, right? Like, oh, and it's a lot of stuff at that age is smaller things, like, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do with my friends this weekend? But it's kind of that, a lot of people get caught up in the now of like, what am I going to do this weekend? What am I going to do next week? What can I do to make myself happy, or what's going to fill my needs?
Immediate gratification.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. Listen, when I was 21, there's a reason Circuit City went out of business. Circuit City gave a 21-year-old a $6,000 line of credit. Now, what did I do with that? I went and bought a new car stereo. I bought a computer. I took my brother shopping. He's like, anything you want, it's on Circuit City. Well, that took me a long time to pay off that damn card at 21. So I get it. We want instant gratification. Yeah. We're trying to find ourselves. Yeah.
That didn't cost you $6,000. That's probably like 15.
Yeah, I lost track. But you're right.
So back in those days, I had a solid group of friends. I mean, you were part of my friend group, and I was lucky that I surrounded myself with some really good people. But again, being in college days, you go out on the weekends and you party and do different things and meet different people. And I got myself into a situation way over my head, and started going down the path of going to the club on the weekend. And somebody's like, "Oh, you can take this ecstasy and blah, blah, blah." And I didn't really know what that was at the time. I'm like, "Okay, we'll try this." And then it went from that to like, "Well, if you want to, if you have friends that want this, I'll give it to you for this price, and you can give it to them for this price, and you can make some money." Well, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, and this was no exception of that, right? And
Hey, the math makes sense.
I'm like, okay, I can do this, and I can get this out to these people. And over the course of about a year, I just lit the thing on fire. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to dabble and do something here. I'm going to take it to the next level. And everything I do, I try and do it to the upper echelon.
Yeah,
of
you're a
what
go
that
big or
is,
go
right?
home. Let's do it.
And
Yep.
so this was not an exception. I'm like, I'm going to go big. And it went from that to me quickly realizing, like, I'm not going to do this on my own. I'll just get some people to do it for me. And it just exponentiated and exponentiated. And in under a year, I was selling a lot of ecstasy. And it got to a point where, again, I was lucky. A lot of people that are in that circumstance don't have good friends, and they don't have good spheres of influence, and their friends are doing it, and everybody around them is doing it, and there's no escape and there's no out. And a lot of people don't have other friends or other people to turn to, so they just continue down this cycle or this path of what they're doing. And I was lucky that I was in a different circumstance. I had a good group of friends. I had a great family. I had all the things going for me, but I made this bad choice of saying, I'm going to be selfish. I'm only worried about me and what I'm going to do today or tomorrow or the next week, and I'm going to go make some money. And so I went down that path, and short of a year, so just coming up on a year, I'm like, you know what? This is not the path I want to go down. I saw a lot of people go down that path and saw some people end up in bad situations. And I made the decision. I'm like, I'm done. I'm stopping this. The problem is I had a bunch of stuff left. I had a bunch of ecstasy left. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I'm like, I need to do something, but I'm ready to get out. I kind of made that decision. And I remember I was out on a blind date. So I picked up this poor girl. I don't remember what her name is. But I picked up this girl, and we go on this date, and my phone starts blowing up. Hey, I can get you, I need whatever you have left. And my brain's like, oh, this is my time. I can be done with this. And I'm like, I ignore it. I'm on a date. Answer the phone. I'm like, look, I can't. I'm on a date. And needless to say, it was persistent throughout the night. And finally, they're like, look, if you meet me here, I'll take whatever you have. And I'm like, you know what? I can do this. So I go pick it up. I have this blind date that I'm with and make up some dumb excuse like, hey, I need to go meet up with a friend and something or other. And so I remember pulling back into this parking lot. In the very back of the parking lot, there's one light on. It's pretty dark. And I'm like, why am I meeting this guy here? And I text him. I'm like, hey, I'm here. Where you at? And all of a sudden, I see these two headlights come around the corner, and they're coming quick. Like this, and I look over, and I see this white van, and it is hauling ass towards me. And I'm like, that's so weird. Why is this guy flying through this parking lot? And it comes up and turns. The doors fly open. Cops in full riot gear, machine guns at my face, and I'm like, holy shit, my life is completely over. And
the real question is, did you go on a second date with that?
No, dude, it was awful. And I wish I knew her name because I'd call her today and apologize over and over. But I can only imagine what she was going through. I mean, they're throwing both of us on the ground. Like, they go through the whole deal. Throw me on the ground. I look over and I'm on the ground and I see her and I'm just like, I'm such an idiot. And I was at my low. And I'm like, I don't know what happens next. Like, I've never been in this scenario, but I know that Like, I'm dead to rights. I'm done. So they put me in a police car, take me to jail. This was on a Friday. And I remember at the time I was going to, like, being around that scene. Everybody's like, oh, if you ever get in trouble, call this attorney. He's the best in the state, blah, 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 blah. And I remember calling my sister from jail. My sister's kind of my angel in my life. And saying, hey, I need to get an attorney. And I think I'm going to call this guy. And my sister said, don't call anybody right now. Call me back. She obviously can't call me in jail. Call me back. So a little while later, I call her back, and I'm like, I'm gonna call this guy because I need to get an attorney. And she said, you need to call this person. And she gave me the name of a lawyer. And she said, don't go with that guy. Trust me, just go with this guy. And something inside me is like, just listen to your sister. And I did. So I called him. He came down to the jail. We had a conversation, told him the whole story. And he said, there's two ways out of this. Either you go cold and we can go in and, they have you dead to rights. Like, there's no misconception in what's going on here. Or you can be open and honest with these guys and tell them whatever they want to know. And he's like, I highly suggest you do the second. And so that's exactly what I did. We went in and sat down with them for hours and answered questions and told them everything that had happened and everything that's going on. And on Monday, we had a court date. So I sat in, it's the longest I've ever sat in a jail cell. The only time I've ever been in jail was that. And sat there over the weekend, and it was the worst of just knowing in what we do right now, you have freedom to do whatever you want. Whether you want to do a lot or want to do nothing, you get to make the choice of what you're doing.
Was the worst of it not obviously being there, but more of just like the uncertainty, all right, what's now what? Like, this could be my life. Like, I could be like, it's probably the unknown. I would think would be a big part of it. Like,
oh yeah, I'm sitting there facing 20 years in jail. Like, I have no idea. Like, my life as it was, which I had a good life and again, family, friends, is done. It's over. And if I'm going to be in jail for the next 20 years or whatever that may look like, I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I don't know if I can handle that. I couldn't handle it today. And so it just gave me a lot of checks. And, when you get in those dire straits, like, everybody turns to God. I turned to God and, prayed, and how can I get out of this? And what can I do to make this right? And you have the conversations, and you have the conversations with yourself. And you really look at what's important, right? Like, I was being selfish, and I was looking at something that was monetary that really doesn't mean anything, and didn't realize what I was sacrificing or willing to sacrifice, which is what's important in life. It's your freedom. It's your family, your friends. And I remember the lowest point for me was Monday. I'm in an orange suit. I have shackles on. I walk into this courtroom, and I remember seeing my mom and dad. Mm. And it was the worst thing that I've ever gone through. And the best way to describe it is I felt like I let everyone down. Everyone that I cared about, you were in my friends group. I let all my friends down. I let my family down.
Because nobody really knew, right?
Nobody knew what I was doing.
Like the best part of it's like the secrets, the side, yeah,
the secret society, or whatever you want to call it. But everybody that I cared about, and everything that meant anything to me, I was giving up because I was making stupid choices, and I was looking at a monetary value of something and putting that above everything else that's really important in life. I was in a situation where I was giving up my own personal freedom. I was looking at, not having that communication or the relationships with my friends and family, and everybody moves on with life. So where are you at in 20 years down the road, or 10 years, or whatever it is when you get out? Like, it was the lowest of lows I've ever been. And I committed at that time, like, I'm never, ever going to take for granted my family and my friends, my freedom, and the things that are important to me ever again. And, I mean, that was the low of my life. When I got done with that, we were in court, and luckily the judge allowed me to go on probation as long as I was talking with the authorities to, work through whatever we needed to work through. And I continued to do that. I was on probation for years, and you would go in and talk with them. I had to go in for drug testing. I had to show up, I think it was once a week for drug testing, which I wasn't doing drugs. After all of that, I'm like, I'm never going back down this road again. But you have to go through the process, and you go through the hoops of, checking with your probation and checking in with all, staying on course and doing what you're doing. And for me, like I said, luckily I was easy. Like, I was on course before any of this. I had good friends. I had family. I wasn't, before any of this, I'd never tried drugs or done anything with drugs. And so for me, it's like, okay, I just go back to who I normally am, and I had no external influence saying, like, I didn't have friends saying, come hang out and do this with us again. Like, I'm just going to disassociate with the small group of people that I started to associate with and go back to associating with the things that really mattered to me in life. The thing that I didn't realize through all of that was the impact it would have on me for literally, gosh, what was it? Probably 10 years. The way that the system works, or for me anyway, the way the system works is you would work with authorities, and they would say, as long as you're willing to work with us and willing to talk with us and willing to help in any way that you can, we're going to continue to postpone this trial for down the road. I said, okay, whatever you need, like, I'm okay with that. And I got off probation, but I still had this cloud over my head of what's going to happen, because it could still come to, okay, we're gonna go to trial, and you're going to be found guilty of all these things, and we're going to put you in jail for this period of time. And so it was just like this lingering thing that was always in the back of my mind of what's going to happen. And every 6 months I would call my attorney and say, hey, what's going on? Where are we at with this case? And he'd say, I don't know, let me call the prosecuting attorney. And they knew each other really well, and he would call and say, yeah, they postponed it for another 6 months. Let's check back in 6 months. And that happened for years. And when I was 30, I got married, and this thing was still going on. So I think I was 20 years old when this happened. And this thing was still going on. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get married. And I told my wife about it, and like, this is just going to continue on. And we did that. And, I think we had our daughter, 2 or 3 years after we were married. And decided we were going to have kids, and had my wife got pregnant with our daughter, and I still have this cloud over my head. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I can't, now I'm not only a husband, but I'm going to be a father. And is this going to catch up to me when I have all this responsibility in life that I have to provide for these people, and I have to do these things, not just for myself, but for my family? And what's going to happen? And so I remember calling my attorney and saying, hey, here's where I'm at. Like, I'm married, I'm having a kid. We need to do something with this. We just can't just keep kicking this can down the road. And he said the same thing he always said. Let me call you back. I'll call the prosecuting attorney. And I remember he called, and he's like, are you sitting down? And I'm like, well, yeah. And I'm thinking, shit, here it goes. It's all going to catch up to me now.
I had an attorney do that to me once too. I was so pissed, and I'm like, and then it was like just like the news that I was waiting for, and I'm like, stop playing with my emotions like that.
Dude, it was awful. And he said, everything's dismissed. I said, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I called in, and your case is dismissed. it's no longer on record. I've been practicing law for a long time, and I haven't actually ever seen this go down the way that this has gone down. And for me personally, I believe God had his hands in that. It's through this whole process, I got a real relationship with God, and I believe that he had bigger things in store for me than I had for myself. And I had to be willing to make the commitment that I would never go down that road again. And I think that if things hadn't happened the way that they had, I probably would have dabbled in stuff again. I probably would have done, gone down different paths and done different things. For me, I think it had to be the rude awakening. I think it had to be here's the test. Are you really going to give this up or not? And I can tell you, I've never gone down that road since. It's never been enticing to me. But I think that God had bigger plans with me than I did. And he gave me a second chance to go do something with my life. And it's not just for me, but I think it's also, I look at what I've done in the trajectory of my life and the different career paths that I've had and companies that I've owned and people that I've affected their livelihood or their life. And that's what I mean by, I think God had something more in store for me than I did, because I had to touch other people's lives that I could have never done if it would have gone the other way.
Dude, thank you for sharing that. That's a lot. And what a cool story. That I'm in, even for my own life, where I'm at today. So there's something, I want to kind of hit on that you said. So as I'm hearing you say, like, God had other plans for me, right? But this is like 10 years of uncertainty and like the unknown, right? Just the weight of that, the weight of not knowing, the constantly doubting how bad could it be. I mean, that's a lot emotionally, right?
It's horrible.
And as I'm hearing you say that, it's interesting to be like, yes, I agree. Just even seeing where you are today and where you're headed, right? I mean, there's working on some really cool, amazing stuff. But I look back on that and it's like, you said this, it's like, what if this whole thing would have come to close in like a year, 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. You might have been like, there might have been a party. It's like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. I'm done, right? Versus like, no, you're going to stay in this. You're going to be in this uncertainty. And with that uncertainty, you chose, because you had a choice, to stay in alignment, to stay in integrity, to not monkey around with all that stuff. And so I'm looking at this like, oh yeah, the universe was testing Jamie. Is he going to stay in it? Is he going to stay in it? Right? And then it's like, okay, he's proved it. He's proved it to himself. He's proved it to, his family and everything else. And like, boom, now it's gone. Here we go. And it's interesting that I feel like it's in those moments where, again, we always have a choice, right? So when the pressure gets there and like, okay, how am I going to take this? And that's where most people, when it gets too hot, they bounce, they quit, they check out or whatever, right? But it's like, okay, how hot can it get? How hot am I willing, how far am I willing to push it? And that's the differentiator between my belief and where someone that makes it or doesn't make it, whatever that looks like, is because they're willing to lean into that fire. When most people start to feel the resistance or the fear or whatever, and then they bounce. But like, no, you stayed in that. And I'm watching, as I've watched you over the last few years, especially, intimately now in a relationship and my two sons working for you, right? I mean, it's cool.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, again, you can overcome the short term, right? Like, I'm going to commit for a short period of time to do something. Yeah. And are you willing to see that out for the rest of your life? Are you willing to make the commitment to stay true to yourself and to stay true to your word, to yourself, stay within integrity, right? I mean, that's, you and I talk about that a lot, is if you say you're going to do something, follow through with it. And I got the test of time on this one. Like, it was crazy. The other thing that I didn't realize in this whole experience, because, that was a weight off my shoulders. Now I know that I can focus on my daughter. I can focus on my wife. I can focus on my career. I can go grow as a human being. But what I didn't realize is now, after that, another 15 years later, I go to this conference. I meet with a personal development coach, and I start talking with him. And through some of the stuff that we went through, realized, we had a conversation of think back to when your youngest years, like, what's the most traumatic thing that you've ever had? Was the question I was asked, right? And I started thinking back to my childhood, and like I had a great childhood. My parents are still married. I had friends when I was little. I had great relationships with my cousins and aunts and uncles, and we were a really close family. So I'm trying to think of this traumatic experience when I'm young, and it just kept pushing me back to this. I said, you know what? Here's the deal. I can't think of the youngest, but I can tell you my most traumatic experience in life.
Orange jump, shoot, shackled in front of your parents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't ever do that.
Yeah, no thanks.
But I think back to like that experience, and I'm like, here's my most traumatic experience. And the exercise that I went through with my coach was, okay, and it would have been the same experience as with another tragedy when I was young, is I want you to sit down and I want you to write a letter to yourself, and not just say it, but sit down and write a letter to yourself today as you are to your younger self. And number one, forgive yourself. And number two, let yourself back then know what your life is like now and where it's going. So I remember taking, that was a challenge. And I said, all right, I'll do it. And left there. And I'm like, when am I going to sit down and do this? When am I going to sit down and do this? And I remember sitting down one day and I'm like, and I just pulled out a pad of paper and I started writing. And I didn't, normally if I'm writing stuff, I'll write and I'll read through it. Is that what I wanted to say? Is that not what I wanted to say? And this time I didn't do that. I just started writing, and I wrote and wrote and wrote, and I think it was 4 pages long of what advice I was giving my younger self, and what I was telling my younger self of where his life goes, and what that really was. And after I got done, I sat down and read through it, and I literally bawled. I was crying about the experience I had with my parents, the experience I had with my friends, the experience I had with myself. And the outcome of that whole thing was, and what I didn't realize is for 20 something years, I identified as that person. I identified as what I did defined who I was. So I made this choice of going down this road and getting in trouble and whatnot. But I took it as I took it literally like that's who I was. And what I realized in doing that exercise was I came to grips with it really wasn't who I was. It was simply a bad choice.
That's something you did.
I made some bad choices and I did some stupid, like retarded things. But it was just a choice. It wasn't who I was. It didn't define who I was, because truly I'm not that person. I just made some bad choices. And it was at that moment that I took those boulders out of my backpack and threw them on the ground and said, this isn't you. I carried it around, and this defining part of the definition of who I am as a human being, or who I am as a friend or a father or husband, whatever that may be, that this is part of who I was. And being able to take those rocks out of my backpack and throw them on the ground and say, this has never been who you are. It was simply a bad choice. Changed how I thought. It changed.
You rewrote the story.
Yeah, I truly did. I rewrote the story, and it wasn't who I was. I just simply made a bad choice.
Life throws curveballs, right? We make decisions. We all make stupid decisions. Some of them more severe than others. There's consequences, both positive and negative, for any decision we make. There's also things that happen to us that frankly are out of our control, or curveballs that really hit us, when we're not expecting it. You've got, here at Experience, you've got this roofing company. You started this, 4 years ago now? 3-4 years ago?
We started in 2019, so it's been
It's been 5 years. Mm-hmm. But again, you're not a lifelong roofer. You had your career laid out. No. You were like sold this other. You were ready to sail off into not retire per se, but like you're ready to take a beat. You had this great buyout, and then all of a sudden life threw another curveball your way unexpectedly, right?
Yep.
And yet, again, looking back on that, as painful and challenging as that was, fast forward 5 years later to what you've built and what, this empire that you're creating,
Yeah.
and you and I talk about this a lot in our coaching, is like, and just looking at my own life, is I truly believe everything is for our good. Both the unwanted, the unwelcome, the negative, the whatever, whether we do it, whether it happens to us, it's a choice as far as how we show up to that and how we respond. And that's why people like you and others can have a low point or something huge happen, and you rise to the occasion versus others that don't, right?
Well, and again, I think a lot of it is the story you tell yourself, right? You and I talk about that a lot. Like, what story are you telling yourself? And I look at the businesses, like I have my roofing company now. I had another company for 20 years before that, and I had two other companies that I started and sold in that process. So, like, I've kind of started and run companies throughout my career. But one thing that I can say, until I had that aha moment of writing a letter to myself, is part of my limiting belief was I thought that I always was going to let somebody down. So that story that I drug with me forever, like I let my parents down, I let my friends down, I let whoever down. Even in business, my biggest fear was, am I going to let this person down? And it was a huge limiting belief for me in my growth trajectory and what I do. Like, even in my previous company, we grew to our peak in 2017, but I look back and I'm like, damn, this whole time I still had this belief, because it was a story I was telling myself. It's what I identified with, that I'm going to let people down. And when I let that go, now I don't ever look like I'm going to let people down. I look at the challenge of, how can I make people better people? How can I lift people up? How can I make the people that are in my life or in my company, or even friends, family, whoever it may be, how can I enhance their life instead of having that fear of, I'm afraid I'm going to let them down? So, like, the fear of letting people down is no longer a limiting belief to me. And it's just because I changed my story. I changed what I was telling myself.
So, question, with you having that limiting belief, did you also believe or see that a belief in other people that they're going to let you down? Was there maybe a little bit of a projection? Were you looking at people like,
really.
or like on guard, like, not that you're thinking about it all the time, but it's like, it's just a matter of time before they let me down, or it's just a matter of time, or was it just really your thing?
Really,
for you?
it was just my thing.
Okay.
For me, it was just my thing. I think back to, I've had hundreds of people work in my companies, and I've never had that thought of, oh, it's only a matter of time before somebody lets me down. I always had faith in people, but I was always afraid that I would not be enough for them, or I would let them down. And it's because of that identity that I had through this experience. And it's crazy when you can let go some of that weight and let go some of your tragedy or your past poor choices or whatever that may be, you can just become better, right? And again, I think at the end of the day, like, I look at my success now, and what we're doing with our roofing company is unheard of. Like, we started 5 years ago, and we're, in terms of volume, growing year over year over year, and our trajectory is crazy. But it's because I don't have as many limiting beliefs. And another thing in that process, picking up a statement, Jim Rohn said something like, the key to success is working harder on yourself than you do in your business. And for me, it was always trying to prove myself in my business. That was my worth. I don't want to let people down. I want to prove myself in my business, rather than what I look at now is, how can I build myself and spend more time working on myself than I do in my business. To me, is the key to success. I think that when you look at success, I think that people that chase success, like, at the end of the day, if you're looking at, I need to make X number of dollars, or I need to go chase this success path, whatever that path may be, I feel like if you focus on yourself rather than your business or chasing success, I believe success finds you, you don't find success.
Yeah.
Like, again, if you're focusing on yourself and being the best version of yourself, success will seek out you.
Yeah, it's energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
It truly is.
to-
We talk about that
All the time. All the time. Well, one thing I'd love for you to share too, because you've got the unique arrangement experience that you and your wife work together,
Yeah.
right? And working with, there's success stories, unsuccessful, and everything in between. And, and being as close to you as I am and watching, it's like you two have kind of gotten a flow. I mean, how is that, you could share with our listeners for those that work with their spouse or might be struggling, like why is it working for the two of you?
Yeah. So my wife is one of the best things in my company. I mean, the stuff that she does is unbelievable. She has amazing follow through, but the key to me in our relationship, I mean, you hear the stories of people that work together and they fight back and forth, or they get home and all they do is talk about work, and then it wears on their relationship and that sort of thing. The key to it working with me and Annie is we communicate. We've always had this amazing path for communication. Like, it's the key to our marriage. It's the key to us working together. It's the key to everything we do is we communicate really well. So when Annie, Annie had a company before, and then when we had Oakley, our daughter, she took a step back and said, I'm going to be a mom. And then your kids start to grow, and it's like, okay, I really want to get in, and she's run companies before and wanted to get back in to the business world and run things here at Experience Roofing. And part of that and why it works so well is we have good communication. Like, we talked as we went down this path of, hey, when we're at home, let's truly be at home. When we're with each other, when we're with our family, let's eat the whole pie there and make sure that we attend to ourselves and our family. And when we're at work, we're at work. And having that separation is key. But also having good communication is a key to any relationship. So even, whether it be with business partners, with people you work with, if you have poor communication, it always struggles. And so that's really the key to me and to her. I know she would say the same thing, is we communicate well and we set boundaries, and we're not working 24/7. You have to have a home life. You can't just.
One of the things
be at
I've
work
always
all
loved
the
about
time.
you and appreciated, right, it is this work hard, play hard. Like, you got to enjoy the ride along the way.
Yeah.
Like, that's something I've subscribed to my entire life, and you embody that as well as anyone, and I honor that.
Well, and there's a key to that too, though, right? I mean, you have to turn off and on, and literally, it's a switch. You're turning off and on. Like, I commit to my people at work. Like, my times at work, which are Monday through Friday, my time belongs to them, and my wife knows that. My daughter knows that. My friends know that. But when it's time to be done with work at night, like, my time belongs to my families. On the weekends, my time belongs with whoever I choose to spend that time with. But you have to be willing, and you have to be conscious enough to turn that off. There's a lot of people that say, I can do it. And then you go ask their spouse, like, oh, how's Jamie at home? Oh, I don't know. He just sits on his phone. He works all the time. There's a lot of people that do that.
Well, I was that guy for a long time.
And if you can turn it on and off like a switch, that's the key. That's the key to happiness for me. Is I love what I do with work. I love growing our company. I love seeing people grow. Like Dom and Cole, I love seeing the growth that those guys have had. It's unreal. That's my passion. But I also have to be willing to turn that off and put my time into my wife and my daughter and see the growth that we have as a family at home. And the growth that my daughter has in her life is, she's getting ready to get into her teenage years, and being there as a father is super important, especially for a little girl. But you have to turn it off. I can't just be at home working all the time. And you see so many people that own companies that they're at home, and even though they're there, they're not present. They're on their phone, or they're working, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, one of the things I've always appreciated about you, and I'm going to say you put your money where your mouth is, right? I mean, you're a roofing company, and in the discussions we've had, and in your marketing, as you're growing your empire here, it's you're a leadership development company, right? And I'm watching you develop these young men and women. Two of my sons that are participating in it, and just seeing the growth that they've had, and again, whether it's roofing. It could be any particular sector. It's not, you just happen to be in roofing.
Yeah. It's not about the roofing business, right?
Yeah, it's about the people, which I've always appreciated that. And I've always, in previous companies for me, when things were always just in sync and just flowing, it's like it's when I was most invested in my team, most invested in my employees. And I just think you crush it with that. And a lot of the success you have had and will continue to have is a result of that. Because again, we live in a world today where people want a shortcut, save money, do this, give the bare minimum and expect the maximum output. And I just don't believe in the long run that works. I think the more you give, the more you invest, the more you actually get.
I 100% agree with that. So many people are like, again, they're chasing success. Like, what? I want this. And really, at the end of the day, it's how can I invest in other people and make them better? And I believe that if I invest my time and my efforts into other people and improve them as human beings, not just at work, but are they better fathers, sons, daughters, whatever it may be at home, and they're better human beings, the end result ends up being success for me because they excel, they succeed, they do better, which in turn makes our company do better. And so I'm all about investing time and effort and energy into the people that work with me, and making them just better human beings all around. And at the end of the day, success then seeks me or seeks our company. Yeah. And, then you have the end result of success.
Yeah. And I'm a huge believer. The more you give, the more you get. And you're doing that. Jamie, where can our listeners, you're growing company, you're looking to expand. So where can people learn more about Experience?
They can go to our website, experienceroofing.com. I think we're Experience LLC on social.
We'll put your links to all your stuff here in the notes so people can access it.
We're a growing company. We started here in Utah, and initially we started in Utah. Just my last company, similar circumstance. We started in Utah, expanded across the country. So getting into roofing, I didn't know anything about roofing, but I knew how to grow and expand companies. And so I took that same model, and it's why I got into roofing. The last company I had was in a different industry, but we built the system and process for 20 years. And when I was looking at doing something different and making a pivot into a different industry, roofing stuck out because it's an unsophisticated industry. And I could take what we built for 20 years, add some sophistication to the construction industry, and go grow it. And so that's exactly what we've done. We started in Utah, branched out to Texas. Right now we're, I don't know, as of today, we just popped up another state today, but we're in 20-something states right now. That's and awesome. Just continuing to grow. Yeah. And I'm having a blast doing it.
Yeah, he is. And for those of you that are listening, watching, this man's going places. And Jamie, it's an honor. I appreciate you being open and vulnerable of sharing your story and your experience, and many people will connect in that. And again, you're crushing it. Things are going really well. And yet you've had your own trials. You've had your own tribulations. You've had your own coming to, Jesus, if you will, moments, right? In those low moments. And those are growing moments. Those are where transformation occurs. And so I appreciate you sharing that and everything you're doing, and grateful for you as a dear friend. So thank you for joining me today.
Well, likewise, Adam. You are a good friend of mine, and I think you share a lot of the things that I see as well. I've seen you go through the things that you've gone through, and you've done a lot of what I've talked about. Like, you've dove into yourself and you've invested time in yourself, and you're reinventing Adam Nugent, and it's a 10 times better version this time than it was last time. Not the last time wasn't great, but
he was a little bit more fun. We're going to bring out that fun guy.
Well, as long as we don't take out a motorhome, I think we're good.
We got to sell it. We got to tell the story to end so back in the day, we were down in Moab, Central Utah. How many years? This was like 2016, 17, somewhere in there.
Something like that.
You had the toy share business, basically, and Jamie had this motorhome, and I was designated driver. So the full blown, the full kitchen, bathroom in the back, whatever. There's 8 of us or so. Anyway, you guys are drinking, having a good time. Anyway, I'm just rallying the hell out of this thing, slamming on the brakes. I'm sober, by the way. Slamming on the brakes. accelerate, summer breaks, turning things over. The entire thing is getting destroyed. You're like counters are ripping off the tables. Our friends are like getting thrown over. I'm laughing. We're all laughing. And you're over there like kind of like, and just so you know, Jamie is the most calm person. Like
it takes a lot for
it takes a lot for you to get heated. Like when we've had Travis season Lake Powell, like I'm having a full blown meltdown and you're there like just calm. Like I got this, just so easy. Anyway, this like,
I'm normally the calm in the storm.
I think it's when the dining room table snapped in half.
Oh my gosh. So like Adam said, it was turning corners going 30 miles an hour in a motorhome. I'm like, this thing's going to tip over.
Oh my God.
And things are going everywhere. And I'm like, okay, we're fine. And then Adam slams on the brakes and the kitchen table comes off the wall. And it was at that moment that I'm like, enough's enough.
Oh no, you were yelling, that's enough, Adam. That's enough, and yelling out. And I've never seen you like that. I just remember like, oh, went too far. Which is so funny because the whole place is destroyed. You think that would have gone too far 20 minutes before, but it was you. All of a sudden, and to this day, I've never seen you show up that way ever. Like, but that I will never forget that moment. We laugh about it now. So anyway,
but no, I love
what a great story to end on.
Seeing you do what you're doing, and again, I believe that if you truly invest the time in yourself, we talk about this all the time, and I see you do it as well. Really, truly, and be honest with yourself and invest the time in you. You will be the best version that you could ever be. Yeah. But you have to make the commitment, and investing that time and investing the effort and following through with yourself first is key. And a lot of people struggle with not only making commitments to yourself, but following through on those commitments to yourself.
It's the hardest person we have ever faced, currently faced, or will ever face is ourselves. You know, and I agree. It's our greatest investment should be us. And when you can quantify it, and I appreciate you sharing that. And whether it's me as a coach or anyone else, I mean, you can't. It's hard to quantify the value that you get from something like that. But really, when you go all in on it, I mean, it's priceless. The impact it has. I'm like, it's hard to even put a price on it. So, dude, I honor your journey, and I can't wait to see where you're going. So,
dude, it's been fun so far, and it's going to be way more fun in the future.
Hell yeah. Anyway, thanks so much, Jamie, and thanks for joining us today on the Burn Up Podcast. We'll see you next time.